The day my manager stole my promotion. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't even lie directly. He just smiled and took everything I had worked for. My name is Marcus Reed, and for 4 years I worked at a financial analytics company in New York City called Apex Insights. We helped large investment firms analyze risk, market trends, portfolio performance, the kind of work that doesn't look exciting from the outside, but moves millions of dollars behind the scenes. I wasn't the loudest person in the office. I wasn't the one making speeches in meetings. I was the one building the models, fixing broken data sets, staying late to make sure everything worked. For 4 years, I did exactly what the company needed, quietly, consistently, without mistakes, and eventually, that kind of work gets noticed. At least, that's what I thought. Because after 4 years, a position finally opened. Senior strategy lead. A major promotion. Better salary. More authority. Direct access to high-level clients. And most importantly, a seat at the table where decisions were made. Everyone in my team knew I was the obvious choice. Even my manager, Dylan Cross. Dylan wasn't a bad manager, at least not at first. He was sharp, confident, good with clients. The kind of person who knew how to navigate corporate politics. But he had one flaw. He cared more about recognition than results. And over time, that flaw started showing. 3 months before the promotion decision, we were assigned a major project, a high-value client portfolio analysis. If done right, it would significantly improve the company's relationship with one of its biggest clients. Dylan put me in charge of the technical side, which meant one thing. I was doing most of the real work. Late nights, complex models, endless data corrections. For weeks, I built something powerful, a system that could predict portfolio risks more accurately than anything the company had used before. When it was finished, even Dylan looked impressed. "This is good," he said. "Really good." The presentation to executives was scheduled for the following week. I expected to lead it. After all, I built the entire system. But 2 days before the meeting, Dylan called me into his office. "I'll handle the presentation," he said. I frowned. "Why? You're not used to executive-level discussions yet." "I can handle it." He smiled. "I know you can. But this is about positioning." That word again. Positioning. At the time, I didn't argue. Because I trusted him. The meeting went perfectly. From what I heard. Because I wasn't in the room. Dylan presented the entire project, the system, the results, the projections, all of it. And he presented it as if it were his. 2 weeks later, the decision was announced. I was sitting at my desk when the email came in. Subject line, promotion announcement. I opened it, already expecting what it would say. And then, everything stopped. "We are pleased to announce that Dylan Cross has been promoted to Senior Strategy Lead." For a moment, I just stared at the screen, reading the same line over and over again, because it didn't make sense. That position was supposed to be mine. I went straight to Dylan's office, closed the door. "You took credit for my work." He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair. "That's not how this works. That project was mine. It was our team's project. You presented it as yours." He shrugged slightly. "I led it." "No," I said. "I built it." He looked at me for a moment, then said something I'll never forget. "In this company, Marcus, visibility matters more than effort." That was the moment everything changed. Not because I didn't get the promotion, but because I understood the truth. Hard work alone doesn't guarantee success. Recognition does. And in that moment, I realized something else. Dylan hadn't just taken my promotion. He had shown me exactly how the system worked. For the next few weeks, I thought about leaving, finding another company, starting fresh. But then I realized something. Why start over when I could play the game better? Because if visibility mattered more than effort, then I needed to become visible, not louder, not fake, strategic. And if Dylan thought he had won, he didn't understand what he had just created. He didn't just take my promotion. He gave me a reason to become something much more dangerous. Someone who understood the system. After that conversation with Dylan, I stopped arguing, stopped complaining, stopped expecting fairness, because I finally understood something that most people in corporate never fully accept. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed to. And if I wanted to win, I had to adapt. The first thing I changed wasn't my work. It was my visibility. For 4 years, I had focused on results. Now, I started focusing on perception, not fake work, not exaggeration, just making sure the right people saw what I was already doing. I started speaking more in meetings. Not a lot. Just enough. Short, clear insights, the kind executives remember. I stopped sending detailed reports only to Dylan. Instead, I copied senior leadership when it mattered. Not aggressively, strategically. Every message had a purpose. Every update had an audience. Meanwhile, Dylan was adjusting to his promotion. At first, everything seemed to go well. He had authority now. More control, more exposure to executives. But with that came something he wasn't prepared for. Responsibility. Being a manager is one thing. Being responsible for outcomes is something else entirely. Before, Dylan could rely on people like me to handle the complex work. Now, he was expected to deliver results himself. And that's where the cracks started showing. A month into his new role, Dylan took on a high-priority client project, a portfolio restructuring model. Complex, high stakes, the kind of project that requires deep technical understanding, instead of involving me. He tried to handle it himself. At first, no one noticed the issues, because on the surface, everything looked fine. Clean presentations, confident explanations. But underneath, the model had flaws, subtle ones, the kind that don't show up immediately. But when they do, they cause problems, big problems. I saw the issue early. I could have pointed it out, fixed it, saved the situation. But I didn't. Not because I wanted the company to fail, but because I understood something important. If you always protect someone from their mistakes, they never face the consequences, and Dylan needed to face them. 2 weeks later, the client noticed discrepancies. Numbers didn't align. Projections didn't match real market conditions. Questions were raised. Meetings were scheduled. Executives got involved. And for the first time, Dylan didn't have an answer. I was invited to that meeting, not as the lead, just as support. But this time, I was in the room. The client asked detailed questions, technical ones. Dylan tried to respond, but his answers were vague, uncertain, and then he did something predictable. "Marcus worked on some of the earlier models," he said. All eyes turned to me. I stayed calm, answered every question clearly, explained the issue, identified the flaw, and most importantly, provided a solution. Within minutes, the entire situation shifted. The client relaxed, the executives nodded, and Dylan went quiet. After the meeting, something changed. Not publicly, not dramatically, but noticeably. Senior leadership started paying attention. Emails started including me directly. Meetings started requiring my input, not because I asked for it, but because they saw the difference. between someone who presents work and someone who understands it. Over the next few months, the pattern repeated. Dylan would take control of a project, struggle with execution, and eventually, I would be brought in to stabilize it. Each time, the gap became clearer. Each time, more people noticed. And each time, my position inside the company became stronger. But I wasn't relying only on internal recognition, because I had learned something else. Real power doesn't come from one company. It comes from options. So I started building relationships outside. Industry contacts, clients, even competitors. Not aggressively. Just enough to create visibility. Because if things didn't work out here, I wanted leverage somewhere else. Meanwhile, Dylan was becoming more confident, not less. Because from his perspective, he was still in control. He still had the title, the authority, the position. But what he didn't see was what was happening behind the scenes. Executives weren't asking if Dylan could lead. They were asking if he could sustain it. And more importantly, who was actually delivering the results? The answer was becoming obvious. About 10 months after the promotion, a major opportunity came up. A new leadership role, higher than Dylan's position, director level. And this time, the decision wasn't going to be based on presentations. It was going to be based on performance, results, trust, consistency. Everything Dylan had been struggling with, and everything I had been quietly building. That's when I understood something. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about timing. Because the system Dylan used to take my promotion was the same system that was now about to take his position. He just didn't know it yet. The director position opened quietly. No big announcement, no company-wide email. Just a few internal conversations and a short list of candidates. But inside Apex Insights, everyone important knew about it. And more importantly, they knew who was being considered. There were 3 names: Dylan Cross, another senior manager from a different department, and me, which surprised a lot of people. Because technically, I was still below Dylan in the hierarchy. But titles don't always reflect reality. And by that point, reality had already started shifting. This time, the process was different. No single presentation. No polished slides. Instead, a series of evaluations, client feedback, project outcomes, leadership reviews, consistency over time. Exactly the kind of things that can't be faked. Dylan knew this was his opportunity. A step up, more authority, more recognition, and from his perspective, it should have been easy. He already had the title advantage, the visibility, the connections. But there was one problem. The results didn't match. The last step was a closed-door executive meeting. 3 candidates, 3 performance reviews, and 1 decision. I wasn't in that room. Neither was Dylan. But later, I heard exactly how it went. One of the executives asked a simple question. Who actually delivers results consistently? There was a pause. Then someone said my name. Another executive added, who do clients trust when things go wrong? Again, my name. Then came the final question. Who should be leading the next phase of the company? This time, there was no hesitation. The email came in on a Monday morning. Subject line, leadership announcement. I opened it, not expecting anything, just reading. And then, there it was. We are pleased to announce that Marcus Reed has been promoted to Director of Strategy. For a moment, I didn't react. Not because I wasn't happy, but because I already knew what this meant. This wasn't just a promotion. This was a shift in power. The office felt different that day. People congratulated me, shook my hand, But behind all that, there was something else. Awareness. Because everyone understood what had just happened. Someone, without the title, had outperformed someone who had it. Dylan? I didn't see Dylan immediately. He stayed in his office most of the day. Probably processing. Probably trying to understand how things had changed. Because from his perspective, he hadn't lost anything directly. Not yet. 2 days later, I had my first leadership meeting as director. New responsibilities, new authority. And one of the first decisions I had to make was team structure. Which meant one thing. I now had control over roles, assignments, and reporting lines. Dylan walked into that meeting, same confidence, same posture. But something was different, subtle. Like he knew the situation had changed, but didn't fully understand how much. We went through the agenda, projects, teams, responsibilities, and then we reached the part that mattered. I looked at the team structure, then at Dylan. Going forward, I said calmly, I'll be overseeing all strategic projects directly. He nodded. Okay. And I'll need someone to handle execution support across multiple accounts. He frowned slightly. Execution support? Yes. A role focused on implementing strategy rather than leading it. The room went quiet, because everyone understood what that meant. I continued. Dylan, I think your experience with client communication will be valuable in that position. Silence. For a few seconds. No one spoke, because the meaning was clear. The roles had reversed. Dylan looked at me, trying to read the situation, trying to decide how to react. This is a step down, he said carefully. I didn't argue. It's a realignment. Another silence. Longer this time. Because this wasn't about titles anymore. It was about control. And control had shifted. Dylan didn't fight it, not publicly, because he couldn't. The decision was backed by leadership, supported by performance, and justified by results. The same system he used had now worked against him. Over the next few weeks, everything settled. New structure, new responsibilities, new dynamic. Dylan still worked at the company, still part of the team, but no longer leading, no longer controlling the narrative. And every time we sat in a meeting, the difference was clear. A few weeks later, Dylan approached me privately. Same office, different roles. You planned this, he said. I shook my head. No. You adapted. He didn't respond immediately. Then he said something I didn't expect. I underestimated you. I nodded slightly. Yes. There was no dramatic revenge, no public humiliation, no shouting, just a quiet shift, the kind that happens slowly. And then all at once. A year earlier, Dylan told me something. Visibility matters more than effort. He was right, but he didn't understand the full truth. Visibility gets you noticed, but results keep you there. In the end, I didn't take his position. I earned a better one, and the system that once worked against me became the reason I moved ahead. Because the most powerful kind of revenge isn't destroying someone, it's outgrowing them. And making sure they have to watch